like to welcome you to the BlackUSA.News morning show. My name's Donnie Glover. Good morning to you. Hope you're doing well. Kevin Parson, you got to cut your camera on, partner. Anyway, welcome to the show. A little rainy outside. Got a few things to talk about. How can we not talk about all of these murders here in the city of Baltimore? Lord have mercy. But anyway, top of the morning to you. It's a lot of other stuff going on. We made it through another night, thank you, Lord. It's just hard in the city of Baltimore. Come on, Kevin Parson, get your camera ready. You got to cut your camera on. East Baltimore in the house, or halfway in the house. A lot of history in East Baltimore. You can pose this question to a Baltimorean, stump them, ask them, where did black people start, in East Baltimore or West Baltimore? Let's see if this cat knows. Hey there, look a little fuzzy there. Wipe your screen. You wipe your screen?
The screen is white. Can you hear me?
No, your camera lens.
Is the sunlight, is the positioning where I'm sitting?
Sunlight is no help, I must admit. But we're gonna go with what we got. I learned to go with the flow. Just keep the camera still.
How you doing? I've been on since 5 of us. It was showing my camera. Then when I got this piece, there seemed like it was another screensaver that came up because I don't have the green screen that you have with the wonderful background of Baltimore City, a harbor-like view.
Folks, we've been joined by the very academic Kevin Parson. Where did black people start in Baltimore? East Baltimore or West Baltimore?
I think it was East Baltimore because, you know, the slaves came in on the ship down at Fells Point. So from Fells Point, they began to migrate, and particularly you had African Americans, what we call the bottom part of East Baltimore, that lived there, and of course folk began to migrate out. But yeah, the slave ships came into Fells Point right at the bottom. They don't talk about that when they talk about Fells Point. I remember as a kid, my father would take me down there and show me the actual stage. They did the auctions for Africans who were coming into the ports of Baltimore. You know, it should have stayed as a reminder.
But there was some good that happened as well. One being the Locke's Funeral Home is over there in East Baltimore.
Yes, sir. Right off of was off of Preston Street. You had a number of funeral homes in East Baltimore. You had the Locks, you had Scruggs, and then oh, your father was also a mortician. Let us not forget that, brother. And then we had I'm trying to think of the one that was on Caroline and Biddle on the corner. I can't call the name, but
Calvin Scruggs.
No, Calvin Scruggs on Preston, Caroline and Biddle, and I don't know. Actually, Tony Bazemore. That's his family. I don't know if you know Tony Bazemore, who works in Baltimore County government.
Of course.
But
was it Betts?
Yes, Betts Funeral Home.
But let me share this with you about the Locks. The Locks Funeral Home started off as a livery service. They were in the transportation, and it is my understanding that it is the oldest, or certainly one of the oldest black family businesses in America, going back to 1835.
Wow.
And so as much as slavery is often highlighted.
Yes.
You and I know our history never started nor ended with slavery.
No, sir.
And we also know that while slavery was going on in 1835, there were free black people here in the city of Baltimore. As a matter of fact, it has been noted that Baltimore had the largest population of free blacks prior to the Civil War.
That is good. That is good history, and that's good data. As you indicated, our history goes and predates way back. I mean, going back to ancient Kemet, Cushites, pharaohs, and so forth. But the interesting point that you raised about the number of free blacks that were here in Baltimore being on the border of the Mason-Dixon line is, I think, a very notable point because there was a lot of things that were going on pre and post Civil War as it relates to African Americans.
Yeah,
So
Baltimore was a jump off in so many ways.
It was the jump off point. You know, it was the dividing line, if you will, for a lot of things, particularly Maryland, the Mason-Dixon line.
Also, can you keep that camera still?
Oh, that's me moving. It's like a bobblehead.
Oh,
no, I'm just kidding.
Stay still. That we should also note that Isaac Myers has roots over there, particularly when you consider the bottom of Caroline Street, where the Isaac Myers
Museum,
Frederick Douglass, Isaac Myers Maritime Park and Museum.
Right. So, you know, the shipyard, those guys were very instrumental around that point of Fells Point, particularly in terms of shipbuilding. Again, African Americans and Africans have had so many skills that were not only economic, but they were craftsmen. And of course, you know, research shows that in particularly in terms of slavery, because of our skills, in some cases, we were given our names like blacksmiths, bakers, cooks, and so on and so forth. They would call you similar to when you traveled historically in various parts of the world of Africa and so forth. They would normally refer to you from the point of which you migrated. They would never refer to you by color and things of that nature. So, yeah, those two gentlemen were very instrumental in shipbuilding and don't get the notoriety around the Museum of History and Art down around Key Highway. You know, you don't see any mention of them in those museums. Of course, we got to highlight our own history. We can't depend on others to do that. The cavalry is not coming for us, even as we talk about reparations. We got the Juneteenth holiday, and we're looking for reparations, which is another issue. But there are a lot of things that we can do for ourselves, and we need to stop begging others to do things for us. But no, I'm very pleased with, and you know, Donnie, you and I had a conversation about your book, which I'm excited to get a copy of, because our history is so diverse, the diversity of it and the contributions and a lot of the achievements in so many different areas has not been highlighted in history. And so we're not digging and doing the research ourselves. Others are not going to bring it to the forefront.
Especially in the city of Baltimore, especially given the bent of the mainstream media, including the television stations, the Baltimore Sun, and that little rag of an online thing they call the Brew.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we just don't get
these entities are not your friends. And even though Black people work at some of them, these papers do not print an Afrocentric perspective.
We haven't had that since the North Star. We haven't had that since the Afro. One of the things I really look forward to as an African American, I'll share a story with you about when I went to graduate school, leaving Morgan. But one of the things I look forward to was reading The Jet, reading Black Enterprise, reading those type of Black journals and those type of Black publications were very critical to my personal development. When I left Morgan State University and went to Shippensburg University in Pennsylvania, which is south of Carlisle, up from Chambersburg, they were under court order to increase their Black population because of the institutional racism. And they were getting federal dollars. And so the federal government was putting pressure on them to admit Black students. I went there as the first minority affairs director. and also a graduate assistant to help pay for my education. And so I was supposed to be that person who would mentor and assist Black students in coming and also surviving in the institution. And so one of the things that I was able to do, and I had to fight the institution on, because when I went to the bookstore, they had no Black publications, they had no Black novels, no Black books. They didn't have Black Boy by Richard Wright. They didn't have Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. There was nothing for Black students who were isolated in a farm-like area to read, to cultivate themselves. And I went to the bookstore manager and I talked to him about that. He told me that if the Black students wanted that, and this is a quote, they need to do their own subscription to those Black magazines and papers and buy direct those books. And I said to him, that's not the case for others here. They're not seeking their own subscriptions to Motor Trend, to LA, to Vogue, and so forth. And so I started, and coming from Oregon, I was a student who was engaged in civil protest there. So I started as an administrator having the students do a petition, and they started boycotting the bookstore out in front. And the dean called me to his office because I'm an administrator. I'm not supposed to be engaged in those kinds of activities. And so to make a long story short, we ended up going into negotiations and doing a compromise. And the bookstore manager did decide to order 2 or 3 magazines and 1 book. And I think since then, hopefully, and I haven't been back in quite a while, the collection of books to really educate white folk as well has sustained itself.
Now, this school you're talking about in Pennsylvania, it was called Shippensburg
University. As a matter of fact, they used to be called the Raiders. There was an effort to get them to change the name of the school because it was similar to the Redskins. You know, it was highlighting Native Americans in their logos.
But this is a private institution.
No, it's a Pennsylvania State College. Similar to like, say it again. I'm sorry.
It's expensive.
It's not very expensive. I mean, it's comparable to other state colleges in Pennsylvania. A little bit more expensive than the HBCUs. A little more expensive than Lincoln and Cheney, of course.
Okay. Maybe I'm confusing it with another school. I thought it may have had a religious bent to it.
No, not at all.
Wrong school. Okay, yeah. So as you mentioned, Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. That applies to the city of Baltimore.
Well, things in Baltimore have been falling apart. It's not new. You remember you were down and you and I used to talk about the tale of two cities. You know, it was beyond the haves and have-nots. You know, in Baltimore, there's becoming a permanent underclass of folk due to, and this is a national trend as well, due to not only politics and public policy, but due to some efforts that have constantly been done to undermine Black people in their rise to political power. Of course, we've been successful in that regard, but we haven't seen the fruits of that labor. But economically, for example, let's look at Uber, for example. And I think about that often. You know, we've been hacking for years. But, you know, if we were to put together a proposal for a loan to have put together what, you know, the CEO or former CEO of Uber did, we wouldn't have been more than likely as successful. They have an international entity, an international conglomerate organization around what we had as hacking.
I know, Kevin. I know, yeah. Kevin. I know where you're going. But when I look at social media today, that's not the priority among Black people today. I'm
talking from an economic standpoint, though.
I'm exactly talking about economics. You and I we push ensuring that Black people get their fair share here in the city of Baltimore. BMoreNews.com has been pushing Black business for this is 19 years. The Black Wall Street Awards, this is 10 years. But you mentioned the business and the politics, and I alluded earlier how the Baltimore Brew goes in on our Black elected officials. They went in on Nick Mosby for simply raising legitimate questions about this whole LGBTQE.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows MBE, Minority Business Enterprise. Everybody knows WBE, Women's Business Enterprise.
Right.
They went in on him for raising fundamental questions. Let me ask you something. Can you tell if somebody's gay?
In most cases, there are people that you cannot tell that they're gay.
Can you tell if somebody's Black?
You certainly can tell if somebody's Black.
All day long and twice on Sunday. So let's just start with that. This is a majority Black city. Right. We Black, the elected officials are Black. Yet, while we should be getting, the goal is 27% minority business enterprise, we get 1 or 2%. And what I see repeatedly in instance after instance, every time Black people go and make an effort to level the playing field, it's always somebody trying to stand on our backs.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. You know,
absolutely correct.
Yeah, the principle, they always move the goalposts. As soon as we're about to cross the goal line, they move the goalposts. If majority rule, then we should get majority contracts.
So this LGBTQE legislation that Odette Ramos, that she was struggling to get in the city council since forever. And I figured after all of that time working to get in there, she would have some type of love and appreciation for Baltimore. But she showed us who she was. We knew it all along. That's why nobody went for it. But she's pushing this legislation. The only group that her legislation benefits is white males.
Yeah, we saw it also with the Alan Bakke case. And you remember the Alan Bakke case?
Wow, you went back.
I would say I was a victim of going to American University, and I was working my doctoral studies in sociology of education over at on Mass Avenue in DC. And what happened was a guy named Mark Book and I were the only African Americans in the program. We could not get any of the graduate or fellowship money because white women were outpacing us in that area because they were considered minority women. The dean of the department.
Just racism. See?
Yeah.
Racists have a way of wanting to change the dialogue. Now today it's diversity, it's inclusion. No, you're still racist. You're racist, right. Your mama racist, your daddy racist. And the only thing that will change it is stop being racist.
Right.
And I pray every racist get the darkest Black grandchildren they ever had.
You know, you draw me back to, again, I told you I was the first director of minority affairs at Shippensburg. I got into another beef with the university. The president, his name was Antonio Setti. He was real good. He was going through some stuff because he was an Italian. He was one of the first Italians to lead the university. But it was interesting because I would do a lot of things for African-American students. And it was very targeted and very specific because my reason for being there was because they had been excluded. There were racial practices. You had some old school professors there who institutionally was making sure that kids came in, but they didn't go out with a diploma. They didn't go out with a degree. And so they called me to the carpet and said, well, you're focusing on African-American students. This is minority affairs. The minority affairs umbrella is broader than that. I said, historically, when you talk about minorities in this country, we're talking about Black people.
Period. End of story. Shut up. Go home and tell your mother go home.
Right.
We sick of this foolishness.
They always try to water us down. Yeah. It's always an effort to water down.
Facebook banned Donald Trump for 2 years. Here, this cat started insurrection. A few black people say black power, and they get blocked for life.
Right. And to
make
take
that some inclusion.
And to take it a step further, would have gotten a death penalty.
Yeah.
Back in the day, if we had caused that kind of insurrection, there would have been a public hanging.
Yeah.
There would have been a public execution, brother.
Yes.
So I don't understand. Well, I do understand.
We
why
know
he
they are.
Yeah.
A crock of crap. And we go around the world trying to sell somebody democracy.
Right. Which is a false pretense. Right. It's pulling, it's trying to close people's eyes to what the real deal is around the machinations and for example, there were many world leaders that we turned on. For example, Gaddafi should have never died, but because Gaddafi was trying to bring
assassinated.
Right. Exactly. Because he was trying to really unify Africa and its resources. Go ahead. I'm sorry, bro. What you say?
One currency.
One currency. And which would have locked out white folk in their racist regime, British and otherwise. They had to
thieves and more thieves.
Right. Exactly.
Genocide, authors of genocide, went in there and stolen people. And why they always stealing our art, bro? Why you go in the British Museum and it's all our ancestors that these animals have dug up? Suppose we go digging up their ancestors.
Yeah, you on point, brother.
And then they justify it. Just like they want to just call J. Marion Sims the father of gynecology. He was a savage. He experimented on black women without anesthesia.
Right.
We know these people. You were talking about Baltimore in history. Do you know who J. Barry Mahul was?
Okay, share.
He was the mayor around 1905 or so. They call him the father of segregation. See, the housing segregation laws that they put in Baltimore were replicated around the country. So Baltimore, and even right now, all of this stuff is by design. What I hate is how black people are so easily pacified with a party, a slice of watermelon, some music, and some cognac.
Absolutely.
With that, we forget about everything.
Yeah, we can be co-opted, brother, for a chicken box and half. It's very easy to co-opt.
Don't forget the Henny, the Cavassier.
Right.
Some alcohol in there to numb the brain.
Right.
We are specialists. This thing here, the Instagram and all of it, we are specialists, but I'm looking at what we pushing, Kevin. I'm looking at what we pushing. Nobody can do a party like us. But I think about the sacrifices of our ancestors who built colleges, churches, businesses with nickels, pennies, and dimes. And here we throw away money, not even realizing that we are cutting our own throats.
This is true. And so often, and you and I talk about this too, Donnie, that so many ethnic groups, I'm looking at the power structure. Dr. K. Whitehead talked about something yesterday, I think was in the article.
Who is this?
Dr. K. Whitehead on EAA. She was bringing out some statistics yesterday.
Is she a radio host or something?
Yes, she is. Okay. So it was interesting because she mentioned that African Americans start out with a deficit, in terms of getting married. And then the kind of the median for even Hispanics who are in this country in terms of making their drug cartel money work, also their collaborativeness in terms of how they work together.
Cartel money ain't working.
In terms of supporting one another.
They support each other, but their cartel money ain't working.
Okay,
if their cartel money was working, we wouldn't have people trying to break into America.
No, I got you, but they want to come into America for the opportunity. If you go down Eastern Avenue, a lot of those businesses
fix where you at.
Okay, but I'm just telling you, they're rising, and their numbers financially arising, the
I'm
business
not impressed.
arising.
I'm not impressed. I'm not
Okay,
impressed.
but let me
Fix
make the
your
point.
country.
My point is that this is the point I'm looking to make, is
Yes,
that they support each other. They
do.
support each other. And now we know that we've been torn apart as a family, and
So
that
have they. Hey, listen, them people
other
fleeing
groups,
South America and Central America, that's their own people killing them. So
yeah, I
just
got
like drug wars up here,
that's right.
hey, they terrorize their own people too. No different
Yeah.
than the herbs. You know, a lot of us forget about the herbs and the slave trade.
I got you. So the point is that everybody is supporting each other, and we support everybody. Lottie, Donnie, everybody. You know, the Jews support themselves. The Asians make sure they support one another. But we give our money to any and everybody. We don't channel our money in a way that we begin to develop our own nation of black dollars.
Hey, somebody trying to call you on your phone, man. You want to answer
that? Those are my my messages that are coming to. I told you, man, I get a lot of text.
Oh, can you cut it off while we interviewing you? That's right.
Yes, sir. I apologize. My apologies.
No, we about to kick you out. We about to talk to New York City, find out what's happening up there in the election.
Oh, yeah. What's going on with the mayorship? That's a very contentious race up there.
I'm getting ready to bring a sister on. We about to find out. But let me ask you about the mayorship here in Baltimore, man. You know, Fox is pushing the storyline about you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm listening.
They're pushing the storyline about whether or not we need the National Guard up in this piece.
I don't think that's necessary. Again, we don't need a cavalry to come and rescue us, man. We can rescue ourselves if we
they selling dope in front of the cops, bro.
Well, that's my opinion. I think that we can do it for ourselves. We don't need to be police, and we're not going to police our way out of this situation.
I'm glad you said that, because nobody's talking about putting Fox. You know, you got to watch Fox because they always trying to twist the story. They highlighted we, our, us this morning. I was amazed by that. But as they did it, they still put in the twist. What they leave out is the historic financial neglect of these neighborhoods.
Right.
These neighborhoods have been neglected for decades. So the damage, the trauma is magnanimous. It just ain't going away. It just ain't going away because you say that you, anyway. I'm gonna shift gears for a second. We have the lovely Black Wall Street awardee, Maria Granville, my sister from Harlem. Hello, Maria. How are you, Queen?
Hi, Danny. How are you? Donnie, how are you?
I'm good. Don't worry. They call me Danny Glover all the time.
I know, but I want to be correct, okay? How's it going?
How you doing, sister?
This is Kevin Parson.
Hi, Kevin.
Hello, sis. Up in Harlem.
Go ahead and pose your question to Maria Granville. She runs Harlem. Be not mistaken.
A lot of great history in Harlem, as we know. The question I wanted to ask you, sis, is how are things on the ground there politically in terms of the mayoral race? What is going on? What is happening? What do you sense? And what do you think the end result will be?
Well, I'm hoping that the end result is that Ray McGuire becomes mayor. That would be my.
Whoa! You going with? Oh wow!
Well, you know, I can't help it. We have, you know, there's some interesting individuals in the race. Eric Adams is definitely going to be my second choice. I intend to take advantage of Frank. You know, there are some, I'm just going to put it politely and say frat boys running. And I really don't want New York City to become a frat house. So I won't name names, but I'm hoping that, you know, New Yorkers don't fall for the hype. Like, you know, giving everyone a stipend every month, as if you can figure out how to pay for that. You know, Sean Donovan, actually, he'll probably be my third choice. I think that he's smart. He's, I think, balanced. And I think that he's going to be able to, he would be able to run the city and put it on a good direction. And the problem with the city is negotiating with the unions. That's the whole thing. So they pretty much run the city anyway. The mayor is more like a figurehead, I think, in some ways. So, how do you get the police on board, to modify their current practices? And, how do you get sanitation on board? I mean, you'd be surprised. Guys told me the other day they won't take dirt. They won't put dirt in the garbage can, in the truck. I actually had to call 311 and their supervisor to get them to pick up dirt, literally, dirt from the backyard. So there needs to be some conversation and some management changes from the top. And I personally think that Ray is going to be able to hire the right people to run the city.
Can we just interject, Maria, that you are a Wall Street professional, and so that was something we talked about months ago. You said that appealed to you because you're all about business. With Eric Adams, you said so apparently he's cleaned up his image with you since the last time we talked, because he was failing in the realm of mental health for Black people from your perspective back then.
Without a doubt. And that hasn't changed. When you look at who's best to run the city overall, that's how I'm going to do my ranking. But when you look at specific issues like mental health, Ray definitely, Eric did not give an answer that made me feel comfortable. Because when you call for assistance with a mental health episode, the only thing on the responders' mind should be making sure that that individual gets assistance. Not that I need to get out alive, And I just,
but don't we know it? We can't call the authorities when one of us has a mental health episode. To call the police is like a death sentence.
That's my
what
point.
we know.
And that was Eric's answer. Like, the first responders are the most important individuals that they get out of there safely. And I just sort of just believe that, you signed up for the job, and there are times when you have to take one for the team. I know individuals with mental health issues, and I have family members who are police officers. So I get it. Everybody wants to come home safely. But I think that the mentality needs to be adjusted such that it's more of a likelihood that the mental patient will get out safely versus exactly what we're saying. It's a death sentence. Why?
Because you're Black. White people can have mental health issues. They can shoot up 20 people and get a trip to Burger King.
Thank you.
If you even look like you're going to shoot somebody, you get shot. We get shot.
That's true. And
Maria,
the thing about,
Maria, you didn't mention, there were some women you had mentioned when we interviewed you a few months back. None of those women have risen to the top 3.
I have all of a sudden become very clear on the terminology used when it comes to politicians: progressive, moderate, centrist, conservative. Before those were just, okay, conservatives are Republicans, they like money. Democrats are liberals, we like social justice. Life is good, right? But to actually understand now that within the Democratic Party, you have people on the far left who want to empty the jails and you know, as we know who's on the far right. We don't even need to talk about Republicans. But there are just certain issues that, you know, a completely liberal stance cannot work. One is as far as I'm concerned, the drug epidemic. We live up here in Drug Central. But the problem is that the people who are here using and selling don't live here. They don't come from here. They're imported to our neighborhood. And the city and the state continuously does it. And now they came out with bail reform. So drug dealers are out on the street before the cops finish the paperwork for the arrest. So now they're not making arrests. So now it's just an open bazaar. And that is what I'm talking about. There has to be some balance. I understand, yes, over incarceration. I'm good. But you know what? If you get arrested for doing the same thing twice, three times, then I don't know, you know, instead of incarcerating you for 10 years, maybe we incarcerate you for 3 months. And then if you get arrested again, now it's 3 years. You know, I mean, make it progressively more difficult to continue doing what you're doing. Obviously, three
Well,
times is not enough.
Maria, that bail reform is a trick bag because you might get let go on your own reconnaissance once or twice, but that's a setup because we know people here that have been locked up since 2018 and they haven't even been to court yet. Those people that there's another side to that bail reform. Kevin, are you familiar with that? People who sit.
I am. And so it
That's
gives
the
a
good
new meaning to
side.
speedy trial in the
Thank you.
Constitution.
You know, you can fix that. Instead, I mean, because we cannot say that there are people who have not done what they were arrested for, but they do deserve a trial. There is no reason that
A
we should
speedy
go
trial.
exactly a speedy trial. So that's the fix. The fix isn't to let them out necessarily after, you know, the second or the third shot. The fix is to give them their trial. That's the fix. And that's the problem.
Well, let me
Because
say this to you, Maria. When you sitting for 2 years, they come around and visit you like once a month, asking you if you want to take what? The plea deal.
well, I don't agree with that either. And you know, when you talk about females up here, I am supporting a female for district attorney. And I had that same conversation with her. You know, I may sound a little conservative, et cetera, which is why I described the wording. But my conversation with her was, you know, like the Central Park Five, put them in jail no matter what, you know, force a conviction down their throat. I asked her, you know, are you going to do that? Or are you going to be someone who wants justice versus a win? And she said, I'm definitely for justice. That's why I'm supporting her, you know. But and I've heard and spoken to the other DA candidates also, but there was something about the way she answered me and the way she looked me in my eye and said it that I agreed with. But so that's the story when it comes to, you know, I'm more of a centrist because I live in the lion's den, so I can see what policies work and, you know, which ones don't. We have a city council person who is advocating a new state law being thrown about called good cause eviction. Now, it's a very catchy name, sounds wonderful.
This is a
Why
black
would
council person.
say that again?
The council person is black.
Yes. And they support good cause eviction because it sounds wonderful
No,
until you break it. But good cause eviction means that you can't evict someone without having a good cause. For instance, with 5 families and below in New York City right now, you can ask someone to leave when their lease is up. If they don't leave when their lease is up, you can evict them because their lease is up. That's 5 families, that's 4 families, that's 3 families, right? That's 2 families. In New York City, Harlem, Queens, the Bronx, the majority of owners are Black when it comes to 5-4 family homes. But they've come up with this good cause eviction because they enacted such draconian rent laws last year that developers have now started pursuing smaller buildings that are not subject to the rent laws. So they are now using a different name, good cause eviction, to try to push the rent laws that are for 6 families and above down to your smallest landlords and smallest owners. It's the same rent laws. They just put a different name on it, you know, and it's rent regulation, rent stabilization.
Where do you see them pushing Black people
Where do I see them pushing Black people?
from
Well, that,
a gentrification perspective?
Good question.
we talked about gentrification before. And I mean, obviously, where the rent is cheaper. So north, north, and north. And then I don't know what they're going to do after that. They keep talking about building affordable housing without talking about how much it costs to build a house. Um, it's sometimes, and I guess this goes back to Ray and me and banking and economics. You know, yes, we need affordable housing, but if it costs $400 a square foot to build a 10,000 square foot building, that's $4 million. And I'm sorry, but a developer is not doing it because he just felt like it. He's planning on making some money. So how's he going to get paid, right? Now, if you want to build affordable housing, the first thing you need to do is lower the cost of building that house by like half to $200 a square foot. How do you do that? City, give the developer the money. I mean, the land. That's number one. New York City, speed up inspections. It can take months just to get inspections. Con Ed, speed up gas installation. That can take years. Every day that a building is under construction and not occupied is costing the developer money. So if you want to build some affordable housing, fix the portions that you can, New York City and in New York State, when it comes to the utilities, to make sure that the cost of building can go down. And then you'll be able to have more affordable housing. No one's talking about that. They just keep buy, affordable housing, affordable housing. Okay.
Yeah.
And therefore you get gentrification.
Yeah, it's interesting, and that was a great question, Donnie, because I was just thinking the other day, I work in the District of Columbia in terms of how DC has been gentrified. It used to be Chocolate City, is now Mocha. And looking at, this fight for DC statehood. And I said, once they get their numbers up, their gentrified numbers up, then they're going to give DC statehood, because then they can get another white congressional representative to be in the Capitol representing the district. So it's just interesting because a lot of the cities around the country are going through gentrification because there's a political and economic shift at the center of these cities. So thank you for sharing that, sister. I'm interested to know. I know you said did you say Eric Adams is running? You support him? Did I hear?
Uh, he would be my second choice,
He's your
yes.
second choice.
I
Okay,
support Ray McGuire.
gotcha. How would that
And
shift? How would that benefit Black people in town? I mean, I remember the days of David Dinkins in New York, but I mean, how would that benefit our people, the people of color?
well, I do not see Ray as someone who um, would negotiate away our benefits. I think a lot of our politicians have, and I'm talking about Black politicians, have felt the need to govern everyone. And I'm not saying that I don't think that Ray would feel the need to govern everyone, but I do feel as if he would govern for Black people's best interest. And, Black people's best interests tend to be everyone else's best interest also. You know, he, for instance, talked about forgiving sales tax for a year so small businesses can prosper and grow. That's something that would help everyone, but it would definitely help us, Black people, I mean. Um, so I'm firmly committed that he understands clearly about, what we need as Black people in this city. Um, and I'm just trusting that he will do those things that, other politicians felt a little uncomfortable doing because they were the first, you know, they felt that they had to, do something that wasn't necessary. So I'll
Maria,
leave
I
it
got
at that.
since we last had you on, I've noticed here in my neighborhood, Sandtown, in East Baltimore, we have a super saturation of white addicts that have bombarded our community, and we have needles everywhere, everywhere. Didn't you tell me you experienced the same?
It's going on right now, and they won't stop. I mean, they just continue to open facilities in one specific little neighborhood, and then they're importing addicts, and the dealers know where to come to find them. It's like they created a mall for drugs right 2 blocks away on Lenox Avenue and 125th Street, the
Wow.
main street of Harlem. Whole Foods, Wells Fargo, TD Bank, and in front of them is a mart. And that's why I was saying about, the bail reform. Enough already. I mean, there has to be some accountability. I do not believe drug users should be put in jail. And that was the war on drugs. But, drug dealers they are targeting us. They are hurting our community. At the end of the day, people will say, oh, they're just trying to feed their family. Well, work at McDonald's,
They're
feed your family.
terrorists. They're terrorists.
Say that again, Donnie.
They are terrorists.
Thank you.
How
So,
how far up that food chain does accountability go? The point of New Jack City when Nino Brown said, "There's no poppy seeds in Harlem. We're not growing in here." So, how far up that food chain should we begin to hold accountability? Because our communities get flooded with drugs and guns, and it's by design. As a part of a genocidal plot, if you will.
I agree 100%. And one thing I can say about the Alvin Bragg, who's also running for district attorney, actually every district attorney candidate I spoke to, they kept talking about going after the bigger fish, the I-95. I think actually Ray talked about the I-95 transport because that's how the guns get here. They come straight up 95. Um, Going after the big guns to get drugs off the street, I know they can do it. Now the question is, will they, and who needs to be in charge to make it happen? I'm going to tell you I think it was 80, but you can look it up. A Kennedy got caught on 116th Street in Harlem buying heroin. I think it was Robert Kennedy's son. I mean, it was heroin all over the place. The next day, I mean, it's almost amazing to me when I look back, but it was so pronounced that I noticed it. The next day, heroin was gone. It was gone. There was no one nodding. I mean, it was literally gone from the entire city. People used to nod on the train, nod everywhere. There was no nodding, there was no heroin. 2 years later, there's crack. And I'm like, wait a minute. A, there's a new drug, and B, who found a way of making a cheaper version of cocaine? It wasn't us. I'm sure we weren't in a lab someplace figuring out how to make a cheaper, more addictive version of cocaine.
Ronald
So
Wilson
it
Reagan.
does go up, and we need to find our elected officials and law enforcement needs to put a stop to it. Because
Ronald Wilson Reagan. Reagan and Colonel Oliver North. Iran-Contra crack.
yeah,
We remember
yeah.
Ronald Reagan, Maria, because the day he was elected, the lottery number in Baltimore was 666.
Mm, 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 mm. Yep, the Iran-Contra affair, right? Flooded our neighborhoods with drugs. What, they just figured out the other day, Nixon, the war on drugs was all about
Vietnam.
Vietnam and Black people, you know. So we know that they are doing it. This opiate epidemic, come on, you know, and all of a sudden we can't have a war on drugs because white kids are now getting addicted.
Yeah.
And
Openly.
Donnie,
Openly. They've been addicted.
I'm just telling you to be careful because when you talk about gentrification, the first thing that comes is their
Bike lanes and Starbucks.
no. The first thing that comes are their dope fiends. The first thing that comes are their homeless. All of a sudden, you're looking at a Black neighborhood with poor white people walking around. Then they follow. I'm not joking. So if you look at Harlem 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago, there was an influx of white dope users and homeless people all of a sudden. And
That
then
ain't,
boom,
that
boom, boom.
ain't, you're right.
They're coming behind them. So if you want to see
Yeah.
how it
Well,
looks,
they
that's the
infiltrate with
progression.
they infiltrate with their junkies first.
Exactly.
They send
I'm
them
not
in.
joking. I saw it.
No, you're
I
right,
And
saw it.
sis.
prostitutes. And prostitutes.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Now I just lost a young person to fentanyl because they lacing this weed now. The kids are smoking with fentanyl, and they're dying at unprecedented numbers. And so, yeah, we have to do something about it, and then we have to educate our kids about this whole weed thing because they're lacing the weed with all kinds of chemicals now, which is causing a greater addiction, especially at the street level.
Really?
Yes, ma'am.
Where are you? You're in DC,
Well, I'm in
right?
Baltimore, but I work in DC.
Okay, because it's legal it's semi-legal in Washington, correct?
Yes, it is, and we have little boutiques in Baltimore where they sell that kind of weed. But at the street level, folk are lacing that stuff, what they call loud, and what's the other name, Donnie? Is loud and some other stuff with fentanyl, and now kids are getting torn down by it. And in many cases,
Let alone the Mollies, the Percocets.
the
So
pill. Yeah.
on that note, Maria, any message, any thoughts about our young people? Maria, it is increasingly a challenge because I don't speak mumble.
Mm.
And I'm old school. I couldn't go to my grandma and my daddy speaking mumble. But these kids, that's all they know is mumble. And I'm highly insulted because we raised them better than that. But our entertainers and all these other fools perpetuate buying things we can't afford to all just for a damn post on social media. How do we reach our young people, Maria?
Well, going back to the race, Ray has a little tagline saying, he wants kids to know how to read by third grade because then they read to learn after that. And it was a profound way of thinking about it, one thing I will give de Blasio credit for was pre-K. Having 3-year-olds in school. I think that's a very helpful thing. I have a 2.5-year-old granddaughter. And so it's been a while since I've had, a baby, a toddler around. But it is astounding how much they can learn at that age. So how do we reach our children? Um, Donnie, I've always said, actually, for years, when I think about this, that there comes a time when we just have to leave the current generation and focus all of our efforts on the next one. Because literally in 15 years, we could be out of this problem. If we put all of our resources into our 2, 3, 4, 5-year olds, first through 12th grade, we would be set, because they would, like to learn. They would like to read. They would like to be competitive. I mean, right now we have an education system where our children feel bad if they get an A. They'll hide it, you know. It's like because they'll be bullied or whatever, because, you're a nerd, you're this, you're that, because you get an A versus, competing to get the A, competing to get the B. We have a whole mindset of things to change. How can you teach 32 kids in a room? And they're all at different levels. So now you're holding one back while you're trying to make one catch up. The education system needs to change. Kids spend more time in school than they do with their parents. And we need to keep it that way, but we need to make it productive. We need to feed them. We need to teach them. We need to love them. We need to art them. We need to sport them. And then we need to send them home, okay, to play some video games and go to bed and start all over again tomorrow. We need to keep them in school for 12 hours, but not just learning, experiencing. What do you like? You want to play a musical instrument? You like to draw? You want some crayons? You want to run track? You want to play basketball? I mean, there's enough kids in college all around New York City, okay, to run that after school program that I am describing right now, And I'm convinced that in 15 years, we would no longer have this problem. We would no longer have the school to jail pipeline. We would have, 12th graders graduating with either vocational training, and there's nothing wrong with being a plumber, okay? They make more than some doctors, or college bound or whatever, small business bound. But I mean, to put it all on the parents, I can't do, because we have generations of parents, I guess it's the 60s, that have been lost, and it's generational. It just continues. So I do think that schools need to step in and let's just try to create one generation of progressive, individuals.
Hey, well,
Well,
sis,
well,
I'm going to share with you.
Kevin chime in because he is an educator. Kevin, what school do you run?
Well, I'm a director not in Baltimore City, in DC right now, but Donnie can recall when I was the co-founder, I wrote a curriculum and a program, a very structured program so I know David Banks of the Eagle Academy up in New York and a couple others up in New York who are doing some great things with African-American males. But we had a citadel of a school, if you will, called Blueford Drew STEM Academy, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, where we were trying to position African-American boys to go into those cutting edge careers that's going to be a part of the future. I mean, if you're not in medicine, if you're not in technology, you're not in the sciences in the future, then you're going to be locked out of a lot of, because technology, everything is being digitalized. You go into a store now, you can ring up your own stuff. Only in Jersey do you pump your own gas. And everything is in big box stores, for example, Macy's, Sears, and others are really closing down their shops because Jeff Bezos is saying you can get it all online and we can get it to you in 24 hours. But we build a model of a school that would change the trajectory of what you were talking about, which was that prison pipeline for African-American boys. Donnie had visited our school, but sometimes we become our worst enemy. If the school was such a jewel that you have forces who don't want to see it succeed because
black people,
right, and people who look like us. And I'm saying we can be our worst enemies. That school, I should have been sitting on the couch with Oprah talking about how we can replicate this model to get. And it was kind of the things because the kids was with us for 10 hours. We fed them breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we had after school program. We kept everybody in school. They were in lacrosse, they were in debate, they were in writing club, they was in slam poetry, they was in checkers, they was in acting, they was in something. And we kept them off the streets and we kept them safe. But we also cultivated them. So we just didn't drive academics down them. We also cultivated them around skills and abilities they had in terms of talent, God-given talents that were given to them. So you're actually on point, and we have to do that. But again, we have to build out and maintain our own institutions. We don't even value our HBCUs in the way that we should, which were very responsible for creating Black leadership back in the day. And white folks saw that. So what they try to do, they try to suck up our HBCUs. So schools that were HBCUs in Maryland, and they try to make them a part of the University of Maryland system. And again, it gets back to watering our programs down.
I want to transition because we got to let her go. But Maria, have you been watching the Olympics? I am convinced that the Olympics are racist. All the damn judges are white. Ain't got no Black judges. Ain't got no Black photographers. Hey, Black people take pictures too, but all you see is white people. Damn, they want every damn thing.
Well, I think you're right from that perspective, meaning doors need to be opened for
2020
Black people in these professions. I agree with you 100%.
Hey, you see all them Black runners, and then you see some white guy shoot a gun. Oh, you went too fast. Well, just shoot the damn gun and stop playing with people.
On the other hand, I'm just loving how we, Black people, dominate every sport that they finally let us into. Pretty soon, you're going to have an all-Black hockey team. So,
yeah, we create the Black Olympics, but I'm very pleased to see there has been the judicial system has made a move on the NCAA because so often our Black kids have been exploited. And education is not enough if you're making millions off the backs of me playing on the new slave field called basketball and football. And Harry Edwards has talked about it for a long time, Professor Harry Edwards. So I'm glad to see that the judicial system sees that if I'm playing at a university and you're selling my name on a jersey and I get none of the proceeds of that, and you're saying that my tuition is enough and you're making millions of dollars, there's something wrong with this picture.
I just saw that today and I'm very happy. My son played college basketball, and I used I actually spoke to the president of the school. It's like, what do y'all expect? Excuse me. I'd love to see a white student get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, run 5 miles, okay, and then come to an 8 o'clock class because they have to take all morning classes because they have to be in the gym practicing by 1, 2 o'clock, right? I would love to see a white academic scholarship student get straight A's academically and do the physical work that these students do. So y'all need to understand, determine what it is you want. You want academically excelling students, or you want, athletes who are also doing their work. Okay, they're doing the B, they may be doing the C, but you know what? They're working and they're doing something that nobody else can do. All right. So I used to be very, very, the whole thing, they can't do a commercial, they can't do this. I was very displeased with the whole system. So I hear you, but I'm glad now that our students are going to be able to do better.
Well,
to make some money.
Yeah, I'm sorry, sis. We see what they expect. We remember the stunning Hollywood college admission scandal. So we see what their expectation is.
Go, child, please. Can you imagine?
Yeah,
I
the
am going
bribery
to have to
scandal.
run off, guys.
Thank
My
you for
next
joining us, Maria.
appointment is here.
All right,
Thank
Maria,
you
good
for
meeting
having
you. Good
me.
talking with you.
And we'll
You
circle
too.
back. It's election day in New York City. Thank you, Maria, Granville, Kevin Parson. My name's Donnie Glover. We'll be back at 7 p.m. tonight for Let's Talk with Party Marty. Thank you, everyone. Be safe.
All right.
Thank
You too. Thank you for having me, Donnie.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Donnie. Nice
Thank
meeting